The prison that doesn't forgive. A deep voice echoes through a hallway made of concrete and silence. Boots stomp in rhythm. Clank, clank, clank. A single prisoner walks between two guards. Chains wrap around his wrists, his ankles, his waist, shining under the harsh fluorescent light. The walls are bright white, spotless. No graffiti, no dirt, no sound. It almost looks peaceful until you feel the air. It's thick, cold, heavy, like the air itself doesn't want to let you breathe. This is ADX Florence, the most secure federal prison in the United States. They call it the clean version of hell. Every surface looks polished, but every story behind these doors is broken. Inside live the men America fears most: terrorists, hitmen, and killers who stopped caring about life long ago. Each one locked in a small concrete box, 23 hours a day. No voices, no sunlight, just walls that stare back. They say this place is escape-proof. No one leaves. No one even tries. But one morning, something happened that made the entire system question itself. A guard stopped at cell 213. He slid a tray of food through the door, but the man inside didn't move. He called his name once. Then again. No answer. When the guards opened the cell, they froze. The food was untouched. The bed was perfectly made. Chains lay folded on the floor. But the man, the inmate who was supposed to be there, was gone. No hole, no tunnel, no blood, no sign of escape. He simply vanished. And in a place where every second is recorded, every movement tracked, every sound heard. That was supposed to be impossible. The news never made it to the public. The prison covered it up. But inside those walls, guards still whisper his name. Marcus Lee, the man who outsmarted hell itself. Some say he escaped. Others say he never left at all. Because at ADX Florence, not every ghost is dead. The arrival of Marcus Lee. It was a cold morning in Colorado when the black prison van rolled up the long dirt road leading to ADX Florence. The mountains behind it were calm, covered in snow. But ahead stood something that looked like it didn't belong on Earth. A fortress made of steel, glass, and stone. Inside the van, Marcus Lee sat quietly, his head down, chains rattling around his wrists and ankles. He wasn't new to prison life, but this one felt different. He could feel it in his chest. Even before the gates opened, it felt like the air itself was warning him. The van stopped. A guard opened the door and shouted, "Inmate 47219, step out." Marcus stepped down slowly. The cold wind hit his face, but his eyes stayed calm. He looked around, towers everywhere, guards with rifles watching from above, and layers of fences topped with wire so sharp it could slice air. The officer beside him smirked and said, "Welcome to the clean version of hell." Marcus didn't reply. He just nodded and kept walking. Inside, everything gleamed. The floor looked polished enough to see your reflection. The walls were spotless. The lights above buzzed softly, like bees trapped in a jar. They took him through 3 security gates, fingerprint scanners, and body checks before he reached his new home, cell 213. The guard pointed. "This is where you'll spend the rest of your life." The door opened with a loud click. Marcus stepped inside. It was smaller than he expected. A concrete bed molded into the wall, a toilet, a small desk, and a slit of glass that barely let light in. He looked out the tiny window and could only see a slice of sky. Not clouds, not birds. Just a piece of blue, cut by steel bars. When the door shut behind him, everything fell silent. No voices, no footsteps, just the quiet hum of electricity running through the prison's veins. Marcus sat on the bed, looked around, and whispered, "Clean. Too clean." He knew what they were trying to do, break him. ADX wasn't about pain or chains. It was about silence. Silence that dug into your mind, hour after hour, until even your thoughts sounded too loud. Days passed like that, slow, empty, endless. He started counting seconds between each guard's step, memorizing patterns, the sound of keys, the rhythm of doors, the time lights flickered at night. And slowly, the walls stopped being walls. They became information. Every noise meant something. Every sound had a pattern. And Marcus began to listen closer than anyone ever had before. He didn't shout. He didn't fight. He observed. Because Marcus wasn't planning to rot here. He was planning to understand it. What no one knew at the time was that those quiet days were not breaking him. They were shaping him. And soon, that silence would become his greatest weapon. Life inside the clean version of hell. Days in ADX Florence don't pass. They repeat. Every morning begins the same way. A metal slot slides open, and a food tray drops in. No good mornings. No words. Just the dull sound of steel scraping steel. Marcus wakes up to the same white walls every day. Concrete bed. Concrete desk. Concrete silence. His only connection to the outside world is a window so small, he can't even tell the time by the sun. Some days it looks blue, other days gray, but he never sees a single bird fly past. He starts to talk to himself sometimes, not out of madness, but to remind his brain that it still works. He counts seconds between footsteps in the hall. He listens for the soft hum of cameras turning. He studies the sound of the ventilation system, how it clicks, how it pauses, how it restarts. It's quiet torture, not the kind that leaves scars on the skin, but the kind that eats your mind slowly. You begin to feel like time doesn't move. You eat breakfast, and before you blink, it's dinner again. Everything blurs together into one long, clean nightmare. The guards say ADX is the safest prison in America. But the truth? It's a factory that builds ghosts. Men enter here with faces and voices, and within months, they become empty shadows of who they used to be. Marcus noticed it too. The man in the next cell used to sing soft old songs every morning. Then one day he stopped. Days later, they rolled his body out under a white sheet. The sound of the wheels echoing down the hall stayed in Marcus's head for weeks. But Marcus wasn't like the others. He didn't fall apart. He started to think deeper. He realized everything in ADX moved like a machine. Lights flickered every few hours. Doors buzzed in a set pattern. Even guard steps had rhythm. Always the same distance apart. Always turning corners at the same second. It was like the entire place was built to a schedule, one so perfect, no one noticed it anymore. No one but Marcus. He began timing things. How long the food slot stayed open. How often the cameras blinked red. How long the power hum paused before the lights flickered. He didn't know what he was looking for yet. He just knew that every machine has a weakness. One night, during a storm, the lights went out for exactly 3 seconds. And when they came back on, the cameras restarted one by one, not all at once. Marcus smiled. 3 seconds. That's all it took to turn silence into opportunity. And from that night, he wasn't just an inmate anymore. He was a man listening for freedom, inside the clean version of hell. The pattern Marcus Lee used to count the days. But after a while, the days didn't matter anymore. Only seconds did. Every sound, every flicker of light, every movement outside his cell became part of a rhythm. He didn't plan it. His mind just started noticing things others ignored. The first thing he picked up on was the guard's footsteps. Heavy boots, always moving in a circle, left corridor first, then the right. Every round lasted 8 minutes and 40 seconds. He timed it again, and it never changed. The lights, too, had a pattern. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the bulbs flickered. Not a random glitch. The same second, every single night. It lasted for 3 seconds. Then everything came back, sharp, bright, controlled. And during those 3 seconds, something happened. The soft hum of the electronic locks stopped. The entire prison went still. No buzz, no click, no motion. Marcus smiled quietly in the dark. He didn't know what caused it yet. Maybe a power relay, maybe a system reset. But those 3 seconds became the most important part of his day. 3 seconds of silence in a place that never sleeps. He began collecting more details. The food tray always came at 7:06 a.m., not 7:05, not 7:07. The doors buzzed open for yard time exactly at 9:30, even if no one came out. Every sound had a heartbeat. And like a doctor learning a pulse, Marcus began to feel the life of the building. To anyone else, it was just a clean, lifeless prison. To Marcus, it was a living machine, one that breathed, moved, and paused in exact patterns. Weeks passed, and his notebook, a mental one, stored entirely in his head, grew full. He memorized times, sounds, and even the vibration of the walls when the power shifted. He didn't have a clock, but he always knew the time. He didn't have tools, but he had his mind, sharper now than ever before. Then, one night, as rain tapped softly on the small window slit, he noticed something new. When the lights flickered at 2:17, a faint metallic click echoed from the wall behind his bed. It wasn't loud, just a small tink, like a switch moving deep inside the concrete. He leaned close, pressing his ear against the wall. There it was again. Tink, tink. He whispered under his breath. You've got a secret, don't you? From that night on, he waited for that sound. Every night, the same time, the same flicker, the same tiny click behind the wall. And slowly, Marcus realized what no one else ever noticed. Even in hell, there's a pattern. That sentence would later be found scratched into his cell wall, the only clue left behind when everything fell apart. The signal the next week came with heavy silence. Rain stopped. The air felt thick, like the prison itself was holding its breath. Marcus lay on his bunk, staring at the small crack in the ceiling. He waited. He always waited. 2:16 a.m. His body tensed, heartbeat slowing. He closed his eyes. 2:17, the lights flickered. For 3 seconds, the world went quiet. No hum, no buzz, no guards. And then, tink. That tiny metallic click from the wall again. But this time, something followed. Tink, tink, tink. A rhythm. 3 soft taps. Then silence. Marcus sat up slowly. He waited. And then, 3 more taps. He wasn't alone. Someone on the other side of the wall was sending a signal. He pressed his knuckle against the cold concrete and tapped twice in reply. Tap, tap. Seconds passed. Then came a single response tap, firm and clear. Marcus felt a strange rush of adrenaline. It had been months since he'd spoken to anyone. Now, words had turned into sound, a secret code between ghosts. For days, the tapping continued. 3 taps meant ready. 2 meant understood. 1 meant stop. The communication grew. They started counting numbers with patterns. Eventually, Marcus learned the man's name, Davis. He'd been locked up longer than anyone in that wing. Davis told him things about guards who disappeared, about hidden rooms, about a vent system that wasn't on any map. He said the click in the wall came from an old maintenance hatch sealed years ago. But sometimes, if you knew the timing, you could open it. Marcus didn't know if Davis was telling the truth, or if loneliness had turned both of them into dreamers. But he listened. Every night. Until one night, Davis didn't tap back. Marcus waited. 2 minutes. 10 minutes. An hour. Nothing. When the lights flickered again at 2:17, the sound behind the wall changed. No taps this time. Just a metallic grind, like something heavy was being dragged inside the wall. Then silence. Marcus pressed his ear against the wall, whispering, Davis? You there? No answer. Only the faint echo of the prison breathing again. From that night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Davis said. If you know the timing, you can open it. He looked at the concrete wall, the flickering light, and the crack running along the side of his bed. And for the first time since he arrived at ADX Florence, Marcus wanted to escape, not from the prison, but from whatever secret was buried inside it. The hatch 3 nights passed. Marcus hadn't heard another sound from Davis. The silence was worse than isolation itself. He kept staring at the crack near his bunk, the one Davis mentioned. It wasn't just a crack. Under the dull light, he could see something thin and metallic inside, like a hidden edge. He waited until 2:17 a.m., the time the lights always flickered. His hands were shaking, but he pressed his fingers against the wall anyway. The concrete felt warm, almost alive. When the flicker came, Marcus used the small screw from his bed frame, the one he had hidden weeks ago. He scraped the crack gently. Flakes of paint fell off like dry skin. Then clink. Metal. His heart jumped. He tapped once on the wall, the old signal, just in case Davis could hear him. Nothing. He slid the screw deeper and pushed. A small section of concrete gave way, revealing a narrow, rusted panel. He couldn't believe it. Davis had been right. The hatch was real, but it was sealed with 2 bolts. Marcus tried turning one. It didn't move. He bit his lip and tried again, harder. The sound of grinding echoed across the cell. He froze, listening for guards. No footsteps. No alarms. He kept working. Sweat dripped down his forehead. His hands were bleeding, but he didn't care. Finally, click. The first bolt came loose. Then the second. He pulled the small panel open. Behind it was a narrow, dark space, filled with dust, wires, and something else. A small, folded piece of paper. He grabbed it carefully, unfolding it under the faint light. The handwriting was rough and shaky. If you're reading this, you're next. Marcus stared at the note, his blood running cold. He looked back at the hatch. Deep inside, something glimmered. A tiny metal object, like a badge or a keychain. It had dried red stains on it. Marcus backed away slowly. He didn't know what it was, but one thing was clear: whatever happened to Davis happened inside that wall. He folded the note and hid it under his mattress. From that night on, Marcus didn't sleep. He just watched the wall, waiting for another flicker, another sound, another sign. But instead, one morning, during inspection, a guard stopped in front of his cell. He stared at Marcus for a long time, then smiled faintly. "You've been busy, huh?" Marcus froze. The guard's eyes shifted to the wall, exactly where the hatch was hidden. And then he said quietly, "You're not supposed to open doors that were meant to stay closed." The disappearance, the guard's words haunted Marcus. You're not supposed to open doors that were meant to stay closed. He couldn't tell if it was a warning or a threat. For the next few days, the prison ran quieter than usual. No footsteps in the hallway. No voices. Even the guards whispered. Then, something strange happened. 2 cells down from Marcus's, another inmate disappeared. It started with shouting. A man screaming for help around midnight. His voice echoed down the concrete hall, raw, terrified. Then, silence. By morning, his cell was empty. No trace of him. No blood. No sign of transfer. No name on the record board. Like he had never existed. Marcus stared at the hatch behind his bed. The same pattern. Davis vanished after the tapping stopped. Now another one was gone. He pressed his ear to the wall again. Nothing. But when the 2:17 flicker came, a new sound appeared. A low hum, mechanical, steady, coming from deep inside the wall. Almost like an engine or a fan. Marcus whispered, "What are they hiding?" That night, he didn't sleep. He counted the flickers, memorized the hum, and watched for patterns. Day after day, the hum got louder. And then, one afternoon, during lunch delivery, he noticed something chilling. The guard who had warned him before, he wasn't there. A new guard stood in his place, avoiding eye contact. When Marcus asked what happened to the other guy, the new one said quietly, "There was no one here by that name." Marcus froze. He wasn't crazy. He remembered the face, the voice. But it was like the man had been erased, like the other inmates. That night, the lights flickered again. Marcus sat still, heart pounding. He could hear the hum, louder than ever. Then came another sound, a metallic clank, followed by a faint, dragging noise. Right from inside the wall, he stood up slowly, staring at the hatch. It shook once, then stopped. The hum faded. The lights flickered back to normal. Marcus took a deep breath and whispered, "Davis, if you're in there, I'm not giving up." He didn't know if anyone could hear him, but he could feel it. Something was moving behind those walls. Something alive. And it knew his name. The visitor the next morning, the guards came earlier than usual. Marcus was half asleep when his cell door clanked open. 2 guards stepped in, both wearing black gloves and blank faces. "Up," one said. Marcus stood slowly, confused. They didn't cuff him. They didn't say where he was going. They just led him down the long concrete hallway, the one that echoed like an empty tunnel. He hadn't left his cell in months. Now, every step felt heavier than the last. At the end of the hall, there was a room Marcus had never seen before. Plain, gray walls. A single table. 2 chairs. And a camera blinking red in the corner. They pushed him inside. One guard said, "You've got a visitor." Marcus frowned. He had no family. No lawyer. No one. Then the door closed. A man was already sitting on the other side of the table, in a dark suit, eyes cold and sharp. He smiled slightly. "Marcus Reed, you've been busy." Marcus didn't answer. The man leaned forward. "You've opened something that wasn't meant to be opened." Marcus's heart skipped. "Who are you?" "Someone who works in maintenance," the man said. But his tone didn't sound like maintenance at all. He placed a small object on the table, the same kind of metal badge Marcus had found behind the wall. Only this one was clean. "Do you know what this is?" Marcus shook his head. "It's a locator. Every staff badge in this facility has one. When one stops sending a signal," he paused, "we seal the area it was last detected." Marcus stared at him. "And what happens to the staff?" The man smiled faintly. "They're transferred, just like the inmates." He stood up and adjusted his jacket. "Stop digging, Marcus. The walls here remember everything." Then he picked up the badge, turned, and knocked twice on the door. The guards came in, grabbed Marcus, and led him away. On the walk back to his cell, Marcus couldn't shake the man's last words. The walls remember everything. That night, when the flicker came at 2:17, Marcus pressed his hand against the wall again. He whispered, "If the walls remember, maybe they can talk too." He knocked 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. No response. Then, from deep inside the wall, came something new, a faint voice. Broken. Metallic. Almost like static through a radio. Marcus, he froze. Davis. The voice crackled again. There, inside, then silence. Marcus backed away from the wall, his heart pounding so loud it drowned the hum. He sat on his bunk, shaking. Something, or someone, was trapped inside the walls of ADX Florence. And now it was calling his name. The secret room. Marcus couldn't sleep. Every sound in that cell became louder. The hum, the drip, even the beat of his heart. He stared at the wall for hours, waiting for the next flicker. 2:17 a.m. The lights dimmed. He stood. He pressed his ear against the wall again, whispering, "Davis? Are you still there?" At first, there was nothing. Then the faint voice came back, broken, gasping, like someone speaking from underwater. They moved the wall. Marcus's pulse quickened. What wall? Where are you? Below, under. The sound cut off. Then the hum returned, louder this time, almost vibrating the air around him. Marcus knelt down, pressing his hand against the floor. He could feel it, a faint vibration, like something was running beneath his cell. He started scraping the ground with the same screw he'd used before. The concrete was thick, but parts of it sounded hollow. He worked slowly, hour after hour, until his hand bled. Finally, a small piece broke away, and beneath it, metal, a hidden floor plate. He pulled at it with all his strength. It didn't move. Then, during the next light flicker, it made a clicking sound, like a magnetic lock disengaging for just a second. Marcus pushed hard, and the plate shifted. Cold air rushed up from below. A dark hole stared back at him. He leaned closer. The air smelled of rust, oil, and something else. Old. Dead. He tore a strip of fabric from his sheet, wrapped it around a piece of metal, and lit it with the tiny spark from his outlet wire. It flickered weakly, just enough light to see. A narrow tunnel stretched downward, metal rungs built into the wall. The sound of distant dripping echoed from below. Marcus's breath shook. Every part of his mind screamed, "Don't go," but something deeper, something desperate, whispered, "Find the truth." He climbed down slowly. The tunnel was colder than ice, and the deeper he went, the louder the hum became. It wasn't a machine. It was something alive. At the bottom, he found a small hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were lined with pipes, wires, and scratched markings. Names. Hundreds of names. Davis. Lopez. R. Cole. Each one carved into the steel with something sharp. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He followed the hallway until it opened into a wide underground room. A maintenance area, but unlike anything he'd ever seen. Desks, monitors, and old, dusty security screens showing parts of the prison, cells, hallways, even the warden's office. But one screen showed something else. A camera feed from inside the wall behind his cell. The same wall where Davis's voice came from. On that screen, a shape was moving, slow, human-like, but twisted in the flickering light. Marcus stepped closer, frozen in fear. And then the figure turned toward the camera. It was wearing a guard's uniform, but the face was gone. Marcus stumbled back, the flame in his hand dying. Darkness swallowed the room. And then, in the pitch black, came that same metallic voice again. "Marcus, you opened the wrong door." The files. Marcus froze in the dark. The voice echoed around him, distant, robotic, yet almost human. He could feel it vibrating through the metal floor. He reached out blindly, searching for the wall. His hand brushed against something, a desk, then another. He felt drawers, old paper, and dust thick like ash. His fingers found a lighter. He flicked it on. A weak flame danced, revealing stacks of folders scattered across the room. They were labeled in black ink, "Inactive inmates." Marcus picked one up and flipped it open. Inside were photos, reports, and dates. Names he recognized. R. Cole, Davis, Lopez. Each file ended the same way. Status, terminated. Cause, unknown. His hands started to shake. He dug deeper. Some files were older, yellowed, with names from decades ago. But one folder stopped him cold. It had his name on it. Marcus Reed. He opened it slowly. His mugshot stared back at him, printed beside a list of crimes and dates. But at the bottom, one detail made his blood run cold. Date of death, September 14th, 2022. Marcus blinked. That was 2 months ago. He wasn't dead. He could feel his heartbeat, his breath, the cold sweat dripping from his skin. He looked around the room again. Was this real? Was any of this real? Then he heard something, a faint whir from one of the monitors. He turned the screen toward him. It showed his cell empty. The bed, the walls, the floor, but no Marcus. He stared at the monitor in shock. That's not possible. The screen flickered. Then a new line of text appeared across the bottom. Subject reactivated. Cell 3B14. Marcus stumbled backward, his mind spinning. Something clicked behind him, a door unlocking. He turned fast, lighter trembling in his hand. At the far end of the room, a metal door slowly creaked open. A narrow beam of white light spilled through the gap. Marcus hesitated, every nerve screaming not to move. But something inside him, that same pull that led him to the hatch, pushed him forward. He stepped closer. The hum grew louder. The air got colder. As he reached the door, a voice came through the speaker above it. Calm, cold, familiar. The man from the visitor's room. Welcome to the lower level, Marcus. You've made it further than anyone ever has. Marcus gritted his teeth. What is this place? The man chuckled softly. You already know. You just don't want to believe it. Then the speaker crackled again. Step through the door, and you'll see what ADX Florence really is. Marcus looked back at the dark room one last time. Then he took a deep breath and stepped into the light. The lower level, the light was blinding. Marcus shielded his eyes as the metal door closed behind him with a deep thud. The air on this side felt different, cold, clean, but heavy with something unseen. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in a long corridor. The floor gleamed like polished steel. No dust, no dirt, no noise. The hum he'd heard for nights was louder here, deep, rhythmic, like a heartbeat coming from beneath the ground. At the far end of the hallway, another door stood open. A faint white glow spilled out. Marcus walked toward it slowly, each step echoing in the silence. When he reached the doorway, his stomach twisted. It wasn't a cell. It wasn't even a room. It was a lab. Inside were glass panels, machines humming, and rows of monitors showing brain scans, heart rates, and numbers that made no sense. On one table lay a body covered with a sheet. Marcus stared, frozen. The same voice from the speaker returned, now clearer. You've seen what we let the world believe, Marcus. Now, you're seeing what we really do. Marcus's voice trembled. What are you doing here? Testing limits. Tracking minds that survive complete isolation. You were one of them. Marcus shook his head. You're lying. I'm a prisoner, not a subject. The man's voice softened, but there was a smile behind it. You think this is still prison? Look around. Marcus stepped closer to the table. His hand shook as he pulled the sheet back. He froze. It was him. His own face, pale, still, and lifeless, staring up from the table. Marcus stumbled backward, gasping. No, this isn't real. The voice said calmly. It's not death, Marcus. It's duplication. You're the reaction, not the subject. The lights flickered. The hum grew louder. And suddenly, the monitors all changed, displaying the same image. Marcus's face, multiplied across every screen, eyes open, lips moving silently. Who am I? He whispered. You're what we built to survive the walls, the voice replied. A copy of a man who didn't. Marcus pressed his hands to his head, trembling. No, I remember my trial. I remember my cell. Memories aren't proof. They're programming. The voice paused. Then, softly, you wanted to know why they call this the clean version of hell? Marcus didn't speak. Because everything here looks perfect on the outside. Quiet, controlled, polished. But underneath, we recycle the minds of the broken. We keep them alive for data. Marcus stared at the floor, his breathing uneven. He could see faint shapes moving beneath the metal surface, shadows of other figures trapped inside glass chambers below. He whispered, "And Davis?" The voice answered coldly. He was a successful subject. Until he remembered. Marcus turned toward the sound, desperate. "Where are you?" Silence. Then the voice replied, "Right behind you." Marcus spun around and froze. Standing just a few feet away was the man in the suit. Only now, under the white light, his face wasn't human anymore. His eyes flickered with the same static glow as the security screens. The truth beneath Marcus couldn't move. The man in the suit, the visitor, stood inches away, his eyes glowing faint blue, flickering like broken screens. For the first time, Marcus realized he wasn't breathing. He wasn't alive. The man tilted his head. "You shouldn't have come here, Marcus." Marcus stumbled back, his voice trembling. "What are you?" The man smiled faintly. "A reminder of what happens when the system needs perfection." He raised his hand and pointed to one of the glass chambers built into the floor. Inside it, Marcus saw something that turned his stomach. Dozens of figures floating in cloudy liquid, motionless but identical to him. All with his face. Each one had faint scars on the forehead, small circular marks, almost surgical. Marcus's voice broke. "You're cloning us?" The man stepped closer. "Not cloning. Replicating. You're a continuation of memory. Each failure becomes the next test." Marcus backed away until his shoulders hit the cold wall. "Then what happened to the real me?" The man's eyes flickered brighter. "He died in 2022. The day his mind broke from isolation. You're what came next, the version that could live inside the silence." Marcus shook his head violently. "No, I'm real. I feel pain. I bleed." The man nodded calmly. "Exactly as you're meant to." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device, a black remote with a glowing red button. "The real experiment isn't about punishment, Marcus. It's about control. The mind that never questions its walls becomes the perfect prisoner." Marcus's eyes darted to the door. It was closed, sealed. "Why show me this?" he shouted. "If I'm just another version, why tell me the truth?" The man's smile faded. "Because you're the first one who asked." He pressed the button. The lights flickered violently. Sirens echoed through the underground halls. The chambers below started draining, the bodies inside twitching like broken puppets. Marcus grabbed the edge of the table as the room shook. He could hear voices now, hundreds of them, whispering his name in unison. "Marcus! Marcus! Marcus!" The man's voice rose over the noise. "Every version tries to escape. None ever make it past this point." Marcus looked him straight in the eye. "Then maybe I'll be the first." The man's expression didn't change. "Then run." He stepped aside, and one of the far doors hissed open. Cold air rushed in. Marcus hesitated only for a second, then bolted through the door as the lights behind him exploded in white. He sprinted down a dim tunnel lined with pipes and flickering bulbs. The whispers followed him. The hum grew louder. Somewhere above, alarms blared, and a robotic voice repeated, "Containment breach, lower level." Marcus kept running until the tunnel split in two. He looked both ways. One path led upward, the other downward into darker shadows. He turned toward the darker one, because whatever was down there was where they didn't want him to go. The exit that wasn't Marcus ran until his lungs burned. The tunnel narrowed, the walls closing in, the hum vibrating through his ribs like a second heartbeat. He stumbled into a wide chamber. It was circular, steel, cables, glowing panels. In the center stood a door marked, "Exit. Authorized personnel only." He stopped, staring at it. The first real door he'd seen since arriving at ADX Florence. It looked old, mechanical, not digital like the others. His voice cracked in the silence. "This is it. This has to be it." He pressed his hand against the scanner. Nothing happened. He slammed it again. Still nothing. Then he heard it, footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate. Marcus turned and froze. The man in the suit was there again, but this time his face flickered, like static over glass. Each flicker revealed a new face underneath. One of the prisoners he'd met, Doyle, Vega, Thompson, even himself. Their mouths moved in perfect unison. "You've gone too far, Marcus." He backed toward the door, his voice shaking. "Why are you doing this to us?" The flickering faces smiled together. "Because you already did it to yourself." The hum rose to a deafening pitch. The metal walls began to ripple like liquid. He could see shapes inside the walls now. Arms, faces, eyes, pressed against the steel from the other side. "Let me out," he screamed, pounding on the door. The man stepped closer. "There is no out. You were built to stay." Marcus looked down. His reflection in the metal floor shimmered. For the first time, he saw what he'd become, his body half translucent, circuits of light pulsing under his skin. He wasn't human anymore. He was part of the system. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The man's voice softened. The experiment was never about controlling prisoners. It was about digitizing obedience. He reached out his hand. "You can rest now, Marcus. You've done well." Marcus clenched his fists. "I won't be your ghost." He turned, grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, and smashed it into the wall console. Sparks exploded, alarms blared. The entire room shook violently. The light swallowed everything. When the dust settled, silence. The chamber was empty. No man. No Marcus. Only the faint hum returning, steady and calm. A moment later, a nearby monitor flickered to life. New subject initialized. And on the screen appeared Marcus's face. Expressionless. Eyes dull, waiting for command. The camera slowly pulled back, revealing rows upon rows of monitors, each with a different Marcus inside, each whispering the same word over and over. Freedom. Cut to black.